Recently that I want to touch on, and after I cover that, I'm going to lay out some of my thoughts about this at the present time because it's a situation that makes me very uneasy for more reasons than one. So bear with me. Um, One of the latest developments is the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor. I'm reading out from the eye here for convenience sake announced he was seeking arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and three Hamas leaders on charges of war crimes, and crimes against humanity in Gaza and Israel. Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, KC, claimed in a statement that the Israeli Prime Minister and Mr. Gallant were committing crimes against humanity in a systematic attack against the Palestinian civilian population pursuant to a state policy. He stressed the profound suffering it was causing Palestinian babies, other children, and women. Mr. Khan also claimed that Hamas leaders had visited hostages captured from Israel shortly after their kidnapping, thereby acknowledging their responsibility for those crimes. Um, let's see, a panel of ICC judges will now consider whether to approve Mr. Khan's request for warrants. Previous decisions have taken several months, so this is not going to happen overnight. If approved, the 124 ICC member countries, including the UK, would be required to arrest any of the suspects that entered their jurisdiction. It's likely to affect the Israelis more than Hamas, because Hamas is unlikely to be travelling to Western countries anytime soon. Israeli and US officials reacted furiously to the ICC announcement, with some vowing to take action against the court. Interestingly, the British government hasn't responded so forcefully. Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz said he was establishing a command center to fight the decision and would demand that foreign governments reject any warrants. The Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called for the dismantling of both the court and the Palestinian Authority which brought the case. The US President Joe Biden called the legal step outrageous, while a group of US senators had threatened to impose sanctions if targets were brought. Um, Among the panel of legal experts advising Mr. Khan was Amal Clooney, who last night made it clear she supported the move, saying, "I do not accept that any conflict should be beyond the reach of law." Mr. Gallant tweeted that accepting Mr. Khan's accusations would be a historical crime, adding, "Placing the leaders of a country that went into battle to protect its citizens in the same line with bloodthirsty terrorists is moral blindness." To Israel's responded furiously. Hamas, not much word on how they've responded. I imagine they don't really care. Um, the other development was that Norway, Spain, and Ireland have now said that they recognise the Palestinian state. Problem with that is defining what exactly that encompasses, i.e., what are the borders. I think it's a bit premature to do that. Israel, of course, has responded furiously to that as well, expelling, I understand, the ambassadors of those countries. So there's a lot to break down there. Is there a case for putting them in the same moral equivalency? It's worth noting that Khan's allegations are quite specific. He's not saying Hamas and Israel are the same. He's saying that there's specific areas that they're focusing on, namely Israel's starving of Gazan civilians and Hamas's targeting of Israeli civilians as hostages. So there's specifics involved. I'm not a jurist, I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know how this will play out. I imagine it'll have a lot of support around the world, but less support in the West. Um, what I want to talk about more is my own feelings about the situation at present because I've I haven't done a U-turn, but I've somewhat, I don't know how to describe it, evolved, adapted, altered somewhat my viewpoint in this. I'll be honest, on October the 7th, I thought, yeah, Israel's going to have to respond forcefully to this. Well, actually, I haven't really changed anything. I still think that was the right step to take. You know, it endured a horrendous terrorist attack. I don't think any part of October the 7th, the targeting of civilians, can be called a legitimate act of resistance. But, you know, one thing I've noticed with this conflict, and I'm on quite a number of forums where this is a discussion point, a regular discussion point, is with the student protests in the US and the UK, particularly the US. I saw one meme, for example, comparing their naivety to supporting Mao's China in the 60s, i.e., the Red Guards. There were a lot of students in the 60s who support that. So it's highlighting their naivety. I think there are disturbing elements in some of these protests. I think there are blatant anti-Semitic elements. I've touched specifically on this before, so I won't go into too many details. I think it's unquestionably there. But I also think there's, if not outright anti-Semitism, there is a naivety about the nature of Hamas. And I think a lot of those students aren't considering that Hamas did indeed start this escalation. Um, I saw one guy interviewed who basically said if he was out there, he would die himself. He would absolutely join Hamas. And this was a young white Australian guy. So there's there is an extreme naivety with a lot of those student activists, but it's all very well to dismiss them. But I think there's an increasing number of voices, many of whom were pro-Israel to begin with, who are now becoming deeply uneasy about this. I will say that I think Israel is engaging in collective punishment. In fact, there's another article just below the one I've read out. An Arab Jewish Israeli group mind, has formed a humanitarian guard to protect and aid trucks from attacks by far right Israeli activists. Standing Together posted clips on social media yesterday showing members blocking attempts by anti aid groups to stop vehicles carrying supplies to Gaza, parts of which are enduring famine. Anti-aid groups have staged a series of violent attacks on trucks they believe to be carrying food for Palestinians in recent weeks and have blocked crossings to Gaza. The National Security Minister, this is a senior Israeli cabinet member, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has offered support for such groups and criticised cases when police have stopped them. It is not acceptable to me that they're bringing out all these forces only to help these aid trucks, he said. He's not exactly helping the Israeli police, is he, by putting them in that position, criticising them. Now, that to me is representative of the sort of far right extremism that the Netanyahu government pandered to. I think there are some Israelis that have an absolutely racist attitude towards the Palestinians, and I think there are some who basically, this isn't just about stopping Hamas, they want to absolutely flatten Gaza and build condos there and then build more settlements. Um, so I don't really believe the Israeli propaganda that this is just about stopping Hamas. I think there is a supremacist attitude there towards all Palestinians. All Palestinians. It's not spoken about enough. It's right that the anti-Semitism side of things is covered because that is a real problem. I've seen it, but it isn't spoken about enough. The racist attitude some Israelis and some pro-Israelis have towards Palestinians, the dehumanizing attitude. I think that needs to be covered more because I saw one comment from an Israeli woman, and I'm assuming that she had a Hebrew name. And she was talking about we as in Israel. And her attitude was the Gazans are absolutely complicit. And I responded to her, I don't know if she's replied or not, but I said, so you're holding a Palestinian child in the same category as a Hamas gunman, effectively. This is the sort of attitude I think loses Israel's support. And she'll point out the way Israeli women were raped and all the crimes that took place against Israeli civilians. Well, that would be preaching to the converted. The thing is, there's this unhelpful mindset that you're with us or you're against us. I'm sick and tired of this idea that you cannot condemn Hamas and you cannot recognize that they're a brutal Islamist organization, but somehow you cannot also criticize Israel. The issue of false equivalencies is an important one. Do I think Israel and Hamas are the same? No. I think one is a nation state. I think one is a terrorist group. But nation states can also cross a line. How does Israel justify bombing an aid convoy when it's clean and marked? How does Israel justify degrading treatment to prisoners when they haven't been proven to be Hamas fighters? I can understand initially they need to make sure that they don't have weapons, but I don't see any justification for keeping men in a crouch position for hours and hours on end in the sun when they have no weapons. I think that's degrading prisoners of war. Um, I think some of the behaviour of individual Israeli troops has been a disgrace. Israeli commanders have admitted this. Um, I think that there are IDF soldiers who are trigger happy, as exemplified by the fact 3 hostages were shot when they came out, even though they had their hands up and they had signs in Hebrew. So anyone that says Israel is above reproach is deluded. Um, It does not sit well with me the fact that over 100 aid workers and 100 journalists have been killed. The silence from Western journalists on that, particularly those who blindly support Israel, is is appalling. It's their duty as journalists to raise these questions. Um, I saw a piece by Melanie Phillips yesterday, and she was just lambasting anyone who criticizes Israel. Um, but it's wrong to say that everyone who criticizes Israel or everyone who's uncomfortable about the situation is some sort of far left Hamas supporter. I am in no rush to join those sort of students. I have a big problem with their thinking. I think there is Islamists among them. I think there's anti-Semites among them, and it's not just this conflict. I think that a lot of them are just anti-West in general. I think some of them absolutely should have their visas revoked. But it's lazy to say that anyone who criticizes Israel is one and the same as that way of thinking. Um, Even Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden have criticized Israel. There was warning against going into Rafah. I actually think we should be a bit more robust in saying, well, actually, aid to Israel isn't just a green light. I think we've sent out the message that it is. Now, in 1982, under Thatcher, and 2002, under Blair, we did withhold aid to Israel. I think the time has come for that again. Um, the other big news, of course, is Rishi Sunak's called an election. I might make a video about that. But, you know, whether Starmer's government will withhold aid or not, I think there'll be huge pressure on him to do so. It would be an act of leadership, I think, it would be a bold statement to do that. I don't think any country on earth is above reproach. I would even say Ukraine. I mean, I'm staunchly supportive of Ukraine, but let's just play the devil's advocate for a second and say Ukraine then went into Russia, they really, counter invaded and started mass killing Russian civilians. I'd have a problem with that. And I don't really agree with the strategy of collectively punishing all Russian nationals, i.e., at sports level. But I'm 110% with Ukraine on the battlefield in the moral sense. I think the two conflicts are different. Um, but any country should, I don't think there should be a blank check or no questions asked at all of any country. Um, and I think that's the problem with the attitude I've seen from some Israeli supporters in the West. And I'm not talking about Israelis here, I'm talking about British and American people, Canadians as well. It's just this blind attitude that Israel is above reproach. I think that is an incredibly short sighted attitude to have, and I do have a problem with it. I do have a problem with the dehumanizing of Palestinian civilians as collateral damage. Now, realistically, I think it would have been impossible to avoid any civilian casualties in a military campaign. But the extent of this, how Israel can claim there isn't a humanitarian crisis. Every hospital has been destroyed. You know, People have been sent to Rafah. They've been told it's safe. Where the hell can they go? And I'm aware that the situation on the ground is complicated. When aid convoys have went in, if they haven't been attacked by far right Israeli settlers, then they've been attacked by Hamas or shadowy components in Gaza itself. Egyptian truck drivers have said that, why are we helping these people? So there's legitimate questions around that. But I have a big, big problem with the dehumanization of Palestinians. I think that is something that's been going on. Um, and I think Israel's lost a lot of support with the strategy that it has taken. I still maintain that some sort of military campaign would have been necessary and justified, but the extent of this, it's just this uncompromising, relentless, they've just blitz the place. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I want to go and see the latest, like the news on the hour, but it does not sit well with me.